Thank you for listening to this PodcastOne Sportsnet production, available on Apple Podcasts and PodcastOne.
All right, it's Thursday, and I'm about to open up an unleashed can of audio whoop-ass just for you guys. I took a couple of Alpha Brain, had a little bit of coffee, and I am firing on all cylinders. I am sharp, focused, memories working in overdrive, and if you want to experience the same mental effects, then you should go to onnit.com/Steve and order some Alpha Brain. Onnit are the folks who make Alpha Brain, and if you go to onnit.com/Steve, you can save 10% off your order. You can actually get 10% off anything you order. So yes, you can get 10% off Shroom Tech Sport and T+. Shroom Tech Sport will give your workout a boost, and it helps you go longer and recover faster. And yes, you can get 10% off T+. T+ increases strength and power. It will improve your athletic performance and is safe to use if you are competing. So go take advantage of this 10% discount off your order. Just go to onnit.com/Steve. And another great thing about Onnit and all their products is if they don't work the way they're supposed to, you can get all of your money back, no questions asked. Money back guarantee. So go to onnit.com/Steve to get your 10% discount off all your supplements. That's onnit.com/Steve to get 10% off your order.
The following program is a PodcastOne.com production. He started in a small town in Texas. Worked his ass off to become one of the most famous wrestlers of all time.
We're going to take care of business tonight, and that's the bottom line.
And now he's dominating the world of on-demand audio. And he's doing it for the working man.
This is a damn good outlet for me to spew the bullshit off my brain.
Yeah! This is the Steve Austin Show. Unleashed. Unleashed.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Steve Austin Show. I'm coming to you from the main streets of Los Angeles, California. A bright, sunny Tuesday afternoon. Now, normally I record the open to the podcast on Wednesday and send it over to Stacy in the 90210 to put together. And my guest today is one of the co-founders of Firestone Walker Brewing Company, David Walker. Firestone Walker just celebrated over 20 years in the craft beer business, and they got a worldwide reputation as making some of the best beers on planet Earth. I'm going to talk to David Walker, and we're going to talk at the Firestone Walker Brew Pub right on the corner of Lincoln and Washington. If you haven't been there, you need to go there because they got some awesome, awesome beer, and you've got to try the food, which is off the charts. If I can give you a couple of recommendations, you got to try the Luponic Distortion. That's a IPA with rotating hops. We're going to hear about that as I talk to David Walker here on the show. Man, their Parabola is off the charts. The El Dorado, off the charts. The Double Jack is another one of my favorites, the Pale 31. So anyway, if you're in the L.A. area, swing by the Firestone Walker Brew Pub on the corner of Lincoln and Washington. It's slam-packed. You can wait in line like I do sometimes. You can call ahead and make reservations like we do sometimes. David Walker coming right up here on the podcast. And we are talking craft beer and how he got in the craft beer business coming all the way from England. And on a personal note over here at 316 Gimmick Street, been a couple of surgeries going on in the house. Hershey, my prized chocolate lab, had a couple of lipomas removed from her this past week. You're thinking, Steve, what is a lipoma? It's basically, I believe, fatty tissue which can turn into a cancerous tumor. And once it gets big enough and you get those big lumps on a dog, that's what those things are. And so she had 3 of those removed just this past week, about 5 days ago. And she's healing up very nicely. She's probably got about 100 total stitches on her right flank, her left shoulder, and on another section towards her right hind leg or left hind leg. So she's a pile of stitches walking around here, and she's doing real good. I'm fixing to go get my surgery tomorrow morning, Wednesday at 8 o'clock. As you listen to this podcast, it's Thursday. That means I got my shoulder surgery yesterday. That's why I'm turning this in to Stacy on Tuesday. Right rotator cuff rebuild. I've had 3 MRIs. I knew before WrestleMania I had a torn supraspinatus and infraspinatus in my right rear shoulder, that rear delt area. Felt like someone shot me in the shoulder with a damn .22 Magnum. Hurt like, it hurt pretty damn good. And when I went to WrestleMania 32, I thought I'd be able to get away with throwing some punches, and that didn't work out so good. Those first few punches I threw at Rusev, everything in there ripped to pieces, really. So I increased the tears that were already there because I've had 2 subsequent MRIs to get to the bottom of this problem, and something going on with the bicep tendon in the front. But nonetheless, not to get into those are some of the specifics. I'll give you the details once I get the surgery coming back on air next Tuesday. And I'm just looking forward to getting this thing fixed. I've had, my left rotator completely rebuilt in 2011, and that was 8 screws and 2 staples to relocate my biceps tendon. And out of all the surgeries that I've had, whether it's ACL, PCL, put in my left knee, the C3, C4 fusion in my neck, the tricep reattachment on my right arm, the left rotator cuff rebuild. Rotator cuffs are the most painful, and they're such a pain in the ass just because of the nature of the kind of joint that it is, where they're located, a lot of nerves over there. Knees are a pain in the ass, but, that's pretty standard because it's a hinge joint. Tricep, same thing. It's a hinge joint. You just let that tendon grow back. Cervical fusion, I had the spinal stenosis, had that canal cleaned up, had that bone spur drilled off my spinal cord, piece of bone out of my hip fused up, but not a lot of pain. So that shoulder, they're a little bit different, and they're such a pain in the ass because the deal with the shoulder surgery is you got to wear this sling for about 4 to 6 weeks. It varies. And you got to keep your arm completely mobile, slung across your body in a sling, just like you had a broke arm or something. And there's a pad underneath there which keeps your arm stuck out about 5 inches off your body. Well, there's a little bit of pain involved in that, but they'll give you some medication for that. The real problem is, just sleeping. I'm a side sleeper, and I sleep on my right side, so that's going to change. When I had my rotator cuff rebuilt in 2011, down there in Texas, I slept in my lazy boy recliner for about 2 weeks until that thing got enough, wasn't tender, and I could actually start sleeping on my back or whatever the hell I was doing. I modified my sleep style to this day. So I'll have to remodify it now that I've got the right arm going under surgery. But I'm looking forward to getting this thing fixed. I'm glad I went to WrestleMania. I'm glad I was able to go there and be in a building full of 101,000 people and be able to weather the storm. I had a good time being there. But I got to get this shoulder fixed and get back in the gym. I haven't really been in the gym since April the 3rd, and I can train, my left shoulder, my left arm, and that's what I'm actually going to focus on while I'm recovering from this injury, because my right arm has always been about a half inch bigger than my left arm because I'm a right-hand dominant person. And so I'm going to use the time to improve my left arm. I can do, overhead dumbbell tricep extensions. I can do dumbbell curls, cable stuff, as long as I don't do anything that's going to affect that right side. And my right side is naturally going to atrophy, being in that cast for so long or being in that sling. So I got a chance to improve one body part. I'm trying to improve my damn arm and my forearm on my left side. And then I'll go to the gym after about a week, maybe 10 days, when this thing kind of sets up a little bit. I can start doing leg presses, leg extension, leg curls, and some seated calf raises. But that way I'll be able to keep the lower body in tune. And I'll experiment with the cardio on my bicycle in my garage and kind of mess with my diet. And at this time, I always tell guys, when you leave the business because you had an injury and you get a chance to step back, well, pay attention and see what you can learn, just from watching all the other guys and gals on TV, on Raw or SmackDown, and, see what you can learn about the business. So I want to see right now, with limited gym time, what I can learn about nutrition and the way it affects my body with respect to cardio and changing my macros, be it protein, carbs, and my fat intake. So that's really going to be the experiment that takes place while I'm getting healed up, and then be ready to go out there and hopefully get another season of Broken Skull Challenge or Redneck Island here in a couple of months, and I'll be ready to go for that. But nonetheless, I'm looking forward to getting this thing fixed. Now that I've bored you with all those details, let's get on and take care of some business. Like I said, my guest today is one of the co-founders of Firestone Walker. He's David Walker. He's got a great story, an interesting story. I'm looking forward to getting down there to Paso Robles to talk to his brewmaster, Matt Brentelson, who's doing awesome things in the world of craft beer and making some very unique flavors. And with that being said, Podcast One Premium is up and running, and that's the only place to get access to every single episode of the Steve Austin Show, whether it's family-friendly or unleashed. And if you join Premium, you'll be able to ask me questions in the AMAs section there, too. There are over 10,000 archives in the Premium service. Mine, Jumpin' Jim Ross's, and Chris Jericho's is less than 14 cents a day, and if you sign up for 2 years, you get a $50 gift card. So join now at podcastone.com/premium. Before we get to David Walker and the body of this podcast, I got to take care of one of the sponsors of this show, Diamond Dallas Page and DDP Yoga. Hey, gang, if you're looking to change your life, get on the path to healthier living, to get yourself on the DDP Yoga program. And right now, Dallas is giving all you guys a great deal if you go to ddpyoga.com/Austin. You get the best price on DDP Yoga, and you get 3 free months of the DDP Yoga Now app. It's available for iPhones and Android, and both versions are getting great reviews. And this app is money. Dallas has done thought of everything. You can do live workouts from the DDP Yoga Performance Center. You can access recipes, cooking demonstrations, and nutrition guides, and you can do it all from your phone. He's got a rewards program built into the app, too. You get points for the yoga you do, and then you can redeem those points for special rewards and DDP merchandise. Dallas is giving you everything you need to get on a path to healthier living, and he's making it as easy as possible. So get the DDP Yoga program at ddpyoga.com/Austin and take advantage of the 3 free months of the DDP Yoga Now app. Like Dallas always says, all you got to do is commit, so make that commitment now at ddpyoga.com/Austin.
Steve Austin. Unleashed.
All right, everybody, my guest today is David Walker, one half of Firestone Walker Brewing Company. I'm sitting here at the brand new Firestone Walker Brew Pub, The Propagator in Venice, California. Dave, it's good to sit here and talk with you. I got to say, I got a couple of beers on the table. Today is going to be a good conversation. How are you liking your new facility here in Venice?
You know, it's we're still getting used to it. You know, for 3 years we've owned it, and we haven't, we've been fooling around with permits and building it out, and so much anticipation with getting the place open. And now we've opened, it's a little surreal. I mean, we got, real people who are in here drinking beer, and it's beginning to write its story as a location. We own this place. It's here for a long time, hopefully, and we're just sort of beginning a long journey. Originally we built it as we call it the Propagator, and the whole idea is it's supposed to sort of give us a platform to pilot brew, experiment with new beers, talk about them, and just come up with new ideas. And we decided to locate this place right in the middle of our largest population. I mean, we're a regional brewery, and we're quite successful in Southern California. So we said, all right, so let's brew beer right in the center of that population. And that's the whole raison d'etre of this place. And we're going to be brewing beer here soon.
Now, what has been the headaches, hassles that go along with the paperwork? Because I know you guys have been wanting to brew for a while. You've got the restaurants in order. You're serving beer, but you're not brewing yet. And why so much hassle with the paperwork?
I think it's twofold. I mean, first of all, I think we're not used to it. We're based in wine country. We've been up there for 20 years. We're used to dealing with small municipalities and so forth. We come down here, and it's totally different. Add to that the fact that the city we're in has never had a brewery here before. They're asking us questions like, does that fermenter explode? These are questions you just don't ask if you've been involved with brewing beer. But that's not their fault. I mean, we have to educate them. But I just have no experience with anything like this, which is extraordinary considering you've got several thousand brew pubs in America. They say in America now, within 10 miles of where most people live, there's a brewery. It's extraordinary. So, we'll get there. I mean, it's one of the largest cities in America. You think they'd figure it out. So,
man, give me a little bit of background, because you're David Walker. There's Adam Firestone. Mm-hmm. You were born and raised in England.
Amen.
And I was talking to you just the other night while I was sitting down enjoying some fish and chips, which are awesome, by the way, and some beer. And I tell people, it's so easy to screw up fish and chips. You don't realize when you finally get a real good batch of it, it's awesome here. So I suggest you come down here and try it. Yeah. But in talking to you, obviously I can pick up that you're a very bright guy. You guys have been hugely successful for 20 years. You're one of my favorite beers. Everybody in the craft beer world knows and loves your beer, so I'm just figuring, man, as smart as you are, you probably got some kind of scientific background or highfalutin college degree. Not the case.
Right, absolutely.
What happened in college? I mean, because to lead you down the trail, to get you in the States, to team up with Adam Firestone and partner this thing up as co-founders.
Yeah, I'm the son that only a mother can love. I was actually supposed to go and study agriculture in Scotland, and that didn't work out. And
why not?
I was probably a little ADD. I just wanted to get on with life. And
dude, as mellow as you are, ADD.
Yeah, I was at the time,
okay.
Believe me. I still am. I just sort of hide it under age. But I got swept up into the computer business at an early age, and that sort of really gave me a reason to, gave me a living actually in California, because obviously a lot of the stuff was happening over here. I got then slowly drifted down into wine country.
But what got you in the United States?
Oh, well,
leaving England.
Yeah, absolutely. I fell in love with a California girl. And
where did y'all meet? Because as we sit, this used to be World Gym. This is where I met my wife.
I know, yeah.
So I wanted to hear the story. I just met your wife the other day, 21st wedding anniversary. Congrats.
Right. Yeah.
How did you meet your wife?
She was an actress in London, and she a theatrical actress, and a good friend of mine who used to mooch off me, he was an actor too, and the deal was he could live in my house for free as long as the chorus line came home on Christmas on at weekends, and so that's the way it worked. But so I met her, and she was a California lady, and so we'd come backwards and forwards to California, and we ended up getting married. We ended up moving here, and she was from a sort of 2-generational winemaking family, and so I got exposed to the Central Coast of California way before we lived there, and we ended up moving there as we built a family because it was sort of cheaper to live there than up in the Bay Area at the time.
But how long did it take you to fall in love with California weather versus... I love England.
Right.
I've got a huge fan base in the UK.
Right.
But you got to love SoCal or NorthCal or especially wine country weather.
It took me about a day to fall in love with California. It took me about 2 days to fall in love with America. I like to say that, Europe's a great place as long as you're not caught trying, and America's totally the opposite. If you're not trying, you're just sort of marginalized. It doesn't care who you are. You could be a billionaire. You could be a guy straight out of school. If you're not engaged and you're not striving to do something interesting and be counted, it's not that you're discounted. It's just that America just sort of moves around you. And it was a British thing. I don't know. It just seemed to me at the time that in Britain it was a little constricting. And I think most Brits who come over here feel that sort of liberating cold air that's of opportunity.
Right.
And it's a very attractive place to be.
What were you doing in the computer industry to make money?
Everything. I mean, a lifetime ago, in the mid 80s, I was sort of part of the PC boom. We were installed.
How did you get involved in that without a college degree? Did you just gravitate to it? Because you're just a little bit older than me, and I totally missed that curve, which I'm mad about now. Yeah. Because maybe I could have made a lot of money, but my brain does not work that way.
It was a lot of it is luck, and I had a good friend who was sort of tinkering with the whole thing in London, and I sort of connected up with him, and he needed help, and I was a willing hand, and it went from there, and that's how it went. I mean, it was literally luck, and I'm very grateful for it, and I went from there. I mean, listen, I'm not an idiot. I mean, I sort of figured it out, and as we all did. I mean, everyone's now a hell of a lot more computer savvy today than they were. But that paid my bills. It gave me a platform to move to the next thing, and that's exactly what happened.
So going back to the Firestone Vineyard in wine country,
Yeah.
is it Paso Robles or
Correct.
Santa Barbara County?
The winery was actually started by my wife's grandfather and father, and it was
And that goes from old Firestone Tire.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. The Firestone family, a fascinating family. You know, obviously they're multi-generational entrepreneurs, American entrepreneurs, great entrepreneurs. And my wife's father was, he in his mid-30s, got sort of, likewise, you know, like a little bit like myself, he got bitten by the sort of the artisanal bug. He threw down some roots in the center of California, and literally was one of the, I would say, one of the foundational people in the modern American wine movement.
Would that have been Leonard or Brooks?
That was Brooks.
Okay.
His father purchased the land, and Brooks developed it and created, one of the first wineries in the area. And actually, when I first met Brooks, and this is before we started the brewery, I was always very inspired by his stories of telling the story of the American wine revolution, and you can draw so many parallels to craft beer and the American beer revolution.
Right.
And that man worked his ass off. I mean, he was running Crush. He was at the tasting room at weekends. Him and his wife Kate Firestone would literally jump in a van and drive around America 2-3 months a year, telling their story, selling their wine, and it was an all-in family operation. And both my wife and her brother Adam and their other siblings were deeply involved. And it's great. It was actually one of the reasons, I suppose, that I fell in love with my wife. Is she's very grounded. She's very connected to a sort of a work ethic and all the things that are wrapped up in a family enterprise like that. And it was really a great sort of certainly a great foundation for us in terms of go to the next level and starting a craft brewery.
So, but at that time, were you involved in the wine business, or were you still doing the computer thing? Just from what I gathered, Adam wanted to go into the craft beer thing, and he couldn't find really anybody to partner with. According to what I read, he found you, or because obviously you're married to a sister,
yeah,
and the two of you joined forces
we did
Firestone Walker.
A lifetime ago, so my wife and I were growing grapes, and so that we got a sense of we got sort of drawn into the wine community that way, and like I said, there's so many triggers that are similar to craft beer. Him and I talked about starting a craft brewery. He'd been in the bleachers of the American wine movement and watching his dad, and he sort of felt the same thing with craft beer. We both love beer.
What did you grow up drinking in England?
It was a range of beers, and obviously it was regional. On where you were. When I lived.
Where were you?
I was down in the southwest of England, just outside of Plymouth, tiny little village town. There was a lot of cask breweries. I mean, the nearest really good brewery to me was a Cornish brewery called the St Austell Brewing Brewery, but. Just a lot of great. I enjoy Marston's. Marston's is a classic pale ale producer out of the centre of England. A lot of their beers, their pedigree is a pretty close beer to our double barrel ale. And
that's your go-to beer here, unfiltered.
Amen. Yeah, that DBA is. I mean, that's the beer that reminds me of home. That's the beer that I enjoy. I mean, it's reflexively the easiest beer for me to drink, and I enjoy it a lot.
Are you into the hop movement at all with the IPAs, the way they've come on so strong? I mean, to me, just because I'm a rookie in this, dude, I enjoy it. But, man, for me, I'm caught up in the IPA wave, and it seems like everybody else is too. But I've read that you're not so much on the big hoppy stuff.
Without question, I love hops. Union Jack, which we should have called Old Glory because it's an American IPA. I mean, it's a big American IPA, 72 IBUs. That beer is beautiful. I mean, I'm not a big fan of hopped beers that aren't balanced. And, Union Jack has got a huge malt bill. That's the amount of malt that goes into that beer. And, you need to create what I say are broad shoulders to really... to magnify the beauty of the hops. If they're just sitting out there on their own, the experience is not balanced for me. So that said, English pale ales to me, there's hops in them. They're noble hops. They're the Goldings and.
So I phrased that incorrectly then. So you just like it's not the hops. You want balance.
It's the American style hops that obviously is the fuel for the American craft beer movement. And frankly now the whole sort of the way that's infected the whole international in a good way. Infected is the wrong word. It inspired the brewery movement worldwide. And it's that all of a sudden it's like, hops can be aromatic. They can be flavor forward. They don't have to be mild like they are in a British beer. Right. East Kent Golding is a delightfully elegant hop, but it's very, very mild. And I enjoy drinking a beer that's malt forward, and I'm just seeking out the hop in the background. I don't need it to be sort of hit me right in the nose. Whereas, a beer like recent beer we've made, Luponic Distortion, where we're using experimental cultivars and so forth. That thing just comes out and hits you right between the eyes. I mean, you want to cry.
I love that beer, and I want to get to how it was created and talk about your brewmaster. But let me take you back to you and Adam. So there you go. You're going to decide to go into the craft beer business. This is '96.
Right.
I mean, what kind of did you have? When I got to the wrestling business, I just wanted to be a wrestler. I didn't know I would turn into the success that I would.
Right.
When you guys jumped in 20 years ago, did you think that it would turn into this? You're California's fourth largest brewery. 80% of your beer is sold in the state of California. You're known worldwide for your outstanding beer. Was this always your goal, or was it an evolution that just kind of happened and you nurtured and grew it and became what it is now?
That's a great question. And no, we had no notion that we would be where we are today. We had no notion that people would like craft beer. When we started craft beer, we needed to persuade people in and of itself that craft beer was of value. And so,
was there resistance to the movement back then? Because when I talked to Ken Grossman at Sierra Nevada, and then they came on the scene, give or take, around '78. What was the temperature like in '96? Because you started in Paso Robles.
Yeah. No, we started in Santa Ynez. And then we moved up to Paso Robles. I'll give you a great anecdote, Steve. So when we started the brewery, so Adam and I decided to start a brewery. Okay, we tried to talk the family into it. They're like, wine business is tough enough, guys. You're on your own. So we licensed the name, created the Firestone Walker Brewing Company, and got after it. And it took us about 6-9 months. We produced our first beer. It was good beer, DBA. It was beautiful. Primary fermentation in beautiful 60-gallon oak barrels. I mean, really interesting artisanal creation. And this is sort of an anecdote that I've rolled out more than a few times, but it's interesting. So I took that beer 3 miles away from the brewery down to the local tavern, and I said, look, you've got to try this beer, guys. It's beautiful. And it took me weeks to get them to try the beer. And ultimately, I got them to give up a Foster's handle. And the guy for weeks, he would not release that handle. And, eventually I said, look, the Foster's beer might be a clean beer and you might have customers who like it, but ultimately there's no story behind that. I mean, it was started by a couple of Americans. They moved to Australia in the 1850s. They sold the brewery after 15 years. It's been owned by scores of different breweries, and the beer that you're drinking right there, that Foster's, was brewed in Canada, and it's owned by a Chinese-owned conglomerate. So why, what's authentic about that other than the Aussie who does the ads? And
this is a great sales pitch.
And so it took weeks, and eventually they took it on. But today, in this farm-to-table world, these guys wouldn't have let me out of their sight before they would have tapped on 3 of my beers, never mind 1. So 20 years ago, we were it was a different world. It was a totally different world.
Yeah. So what was the growth process to go from one step to the next? Because that first brewery y'all bought, was that a converted wine, or was that a craft beer place that y'all bought?
Okay,
but you had to do a lot of tinkering with the equipment.
Yeah, well, no, you're right, we didn't. So we were lucky. So we rented this old wine barrel from our wine barrel room from the family, and started brewing beer. And we tinkered around with a couple of ideas. I actually drove down here in the sort of 6 months into us starting, and I found an old brew house that we paid $24,000 for, put it on a trailer, brought it back. My partner grabbed some old tanks out of the winery. We integrated the wood, and we slowly started to brew and slowly started to get sort of get the beers out. But it was just, people didn't really understand what we were trying to do.
Right.
I mean, literally, we had to hand sell every customer. But the great thing was, we were doing it. Tony McGee at Lagunitas was doing it. Greg and Steve down at Stone were doing it. There was a whole rash of us at the time. I don't know, 12, 15 of us that all sort of started, and we were all talking about it. And so I suppose what happened is people were hearing the message every now and then, although it was fleeting, and it resonated.
How involved in the actual beer making process were you? Because, I know Matt Brentelson is your brewmaster that you guys have had now for, how many years?
15 years.
15 years, yeah. For the first 5. I mean, how involved were you in the actual formulation of the beer, building the malt bill, the hops, and all that?
So when we started, Adam and I were pretty, within the first year, we were very opinionated about the beer. We were trying to figure out how to brew it, and we realized quite quickly that, and a lot of this came from Adam's side of the business, which is, he's in the winemaking business, and he was essentially a wine grower, and he had a winemaker that was sitting right in the center of the vineyard, who was driving the vision for the wines, and you quickly realize that, and I think it's a differential in our brewery. It's one of the reasons I think our brewery has been so well thought of for so long, is that we treat the brewmaster in our breweries as the central vision for the beer.
Right.
So we wanted to create the estate, the brewery around it, and put a brewery right in the middle. So very early on, we figured we needed one. So, there weren't a lot of brewers around who knew how to brew on basically miniature equipment. But there was a great program going on in UC Davis. We had some connections up there, obviously through the wine. And it was as simple as, I remember, I went up and met with Dr. Michael Lewis, who was running the program at the time, for lunch. No, it was for dinner, that's right. And we had a connection to him through the wine, and I sort of said, the graduating class this year, are there any standouts? And he named 4 or 5 guys. And the guy I remember was a guy, Jeffers Richardson. I mean, and the name obviously is, it sounded almost presidential. So I went out and found Jeffers Richardson, offered him a job on the spot. We put him in a car, and within a week he was brewing for us. And that was really the beginning of our formal process. And at that point, it was, the formulation and the brewing of the beer was in the hands of professionals. We definitely guided, certainly in the early days, styles and...
How did you dictate or determine what styles that you would brew?
I was a fan of Sierra Nevada. I was actually a fan of Red Hook in the early days.
Yeah.
And, that beer was made at the time this was prior to... Anheuser-Busch getting involved with them, but Paul Shipman was a wild man who was one of the founders of the whole, so certainly beer movement up in the Pacific Northwest, and but they had a nice little brewery in I think it was Ballard or Fremont, one of the two down there, and they don't brew there anymore now, but they made their ESB was a beer that I really liked. I mean, it was flawed. I mean, everybody said it was sort of heavy on diacetyl, so it had a little bit of a buttery flavor, but I loved it. And so that beer was one of my benchmarks, our benchmarks. Sierra Nevada Pale Ale was a benchmark. North Coast Amber was another benchmark. That was another great beer that we liked. And so we basically just sort of started to drill down on what we wanted to do, and that gave birth to DBA. And then, obviously DBA had its own heritage in as much as we really wanted to make an English pale ale in the classic style of British pale ale brewers, which meant we needed the Burton Union. And the Burton Union, for those who don't know, and
I've read about it, I still don't understand it.
Yeah, well, it's a contraption that was developed by British brewers a lifetime ago. And what they used to do is they used to take some of the beer, and it would go through these linked oak barrels. They were puncheons, sort of slightly larger barrels than wine barrels, and the beer goes through fermentation in these barrels, and then as it effervesces under pressure, it rises up essentially through a hole in the barrel, through a tube called a swan neck, and then drops down into a little canal called a barmback, and then the beer sort of flows down this little canal, tiny canal. So these barrels are all linked, and so you might have, in a union, 50 or 100 of these barrels linked, all going through this unique athletic fermentation in a tiny little vessel, pushing the beer out through the swan neck. It flows, it effervesces down, and so you can go to Marston's Brewery in Burton right now. It's the only union left on the planet, other than the sort of Frankenstein version we have, and it's so beautiful. You stand in it, it's about the size of a football field, and you hear and smell this beer effervescing out of these barrels, and it's just fabulous. Anyway, so we set out to mimic that on a much smaller scale, obviously, and that was DBA. I digress, but that was what made that beer so interesting to us.
So 5 years in, what happens to Jeffers? Because along comes Matt Brynildson.
Right. So Jeffers fell in love. It happens to people, you know.
Yeah, I've done it a few times.
So he fell in love with this lady who was running the lab at Sierra Nevada. So there was nothing. There was wild horses couldn't keep him. So he took off to Sierra Nevada and started a life up there. Went to brew for Ken Grossman and Steve Dressler, and he was there for a while. And what's fascinating, actually, I mean, this just shows you how small our world is. So Jeffers takes off and he has a whole series of other careers, and eventually he comes back and he joins Jim Crooks and helps set up our Wild Ale program, our Barrel Works. And then ultimately Melanie, she ends up resigning from Sierra Nevada after a fabulous career. She was, I think she was just ready to leave Chico. And before she could find a job, we snatched her up, and she now works for us down in Paso Robles. So,
hey, I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret about TrueCar and the TrueCar app. You can use TrueCar to help you buy a used car. It ain't just for new car purchases. There are over 500,000 pre-owned vehicles available from TrueCar certified dealers nationwide. And there are over 11,000 TrueCar certified dealers. And TrueCar lets you get upfront pricing information on new and used vehicles and lets you see what other people paid for the car you want so that you feel confident you're getting a fair price. With TrueCar, via their TrueCar pricing curve, you see what other people paid for the car and you lock in your guaranteed savings. Then you can connect with a local certified dealer of your choosing, take them your TrueCar Guaranteed Savings Certificate, and make your car buying experience quick and easy. Over 2 million cars have been sold to TrueCar users by the TrueCar Certified Dealer Network. And TrueCar users save an average of over $3,000 off MSRP. So when you're ready to buy a new or a used car, visit TrueCar.com or download the TrueCar app to enjoy a better car buying experience. Some features not available in all states. Well, here's the thing. So Jeffers has gone. It's interesting because, man, I was just reading about Matt Brynildson. Here he is in Kalamazoo College. He gets a bachelor degree in chemistry, and he goes into hop chemistry. I never heard of hop chemistry. The guy was going to be a doctor. Okay, well, then he finds out he can actually make a living by brewing.
Right.
Well, Goose Island founder Greg Hall finds him.
Yep.
Like you found Jeffers.
Yep.
And he puts him on, and he goes on to brew for Goose Island. How did you guys get him from Goose Island? Because he got the urge to come west,
right,
to do the IPAs, and
right,
the craft beer movement was really swinging out here.
Bingo.
So how did y'all find him?
So what happened is here we are brewing in next to the winery, okay, cranking. All of a sudden, people like DBA, they're connecting with great tasting beer. They don't understand it, but they're drinking it. They love it. So we say, okay, we need to build a bigger brewery. And we start to build a brewery in that area, run out of money. So it turns into a giant warehouse, and we carry on brewing in the rented barrel space. And all of a sudden, a purpose-built brewery, a regional brewery that was built an hour and a half north of us, called the Slow Brewing Company, goes out of business. It's a shame, but it happens. Eventually, we bought it off the bank, and it was a compelling reason. It was sort of more efficient for us to buy that brewery than finish out the existing one, and so we moved our whole focus north. When we arrive, the place is locked up and chained up, and it's been sort of out of business for 90 days. When we arrive, Adam and I are walking around in the building, and literally Matt is sort of dinking from tank to tank and then leaving the building. He actually is entering the building illegally. And what had happened is Matt had moved out from Goose Island to run this brewery. The brewery had gone out of business. He didn't have a job. He hasn't confirmed this. I'm not even sure he had anywhere to live. I mean, He was like bunking on people's couches. But the only thing he knew to do was to keep the beer fresh. And so he was actually keeping the beer alive in that brewery while it was going through this transition. So that spoke volumes to us. And so we just said, hey, do you want to join up? We had no idea, absolutely no idea who he was, his background, or his great talent. And as we got to know each other, it became quite apparent that he was a super talented brewery.
I want to get into a couple of the beers. Before we do, I got to go to you about the artwork. I'm a big fanatic about labels, just because back in my day of selling T-shirts or this, that, or whatever, I've always been really into art. I don't have an artistic bone in my body. If I could sing or draw or paint, I'd be in heaven. I can't. So who did you guys go to for your artwork? And as you and Adam sat there, how did you come up with the lion and the bear, the imagery? And did you just go to a big company off Jump Street, or did you have somebody local that was drawing things up for you, and that kind of gave you the direction you were looking for? Or was it always the lion and the bear from the get-go?
It was an evolution. I mean, it's a good question. I mean, the guiding principle that Adam and I always had is that we as owners and founders needed to own our image and our message and how we appeared to the world. And the problem with that is it's really painful. First of all, you got two people who argue over everything. So it's like arguing over the colors of your bathroom. Do you know what I mean? And so we would argue endlessly over all of these pieces. I mean, we debate aggressively about most things, which led to the Lion and Bear. We had some clever guy, a friend of mine, who was sort of arbitrating a discussion between him and I, and he said, you two are hilarious, and so he anointed me the lion because of Britain, it's English, and Adam the bear because of California. And
dude, that is tremendous.
And so we're the lion and bear. In fact, you go to the brewery, and we got over 400 employees now, and there's lion people and there's bear people. I mean, they wear shirts, and whenever we get into discussions, they'll fall on one side of the aisle or the other, and so that's how it grew. I mean, it was just sort of organic, and when you have a brand and you want to articulate to consumers, I mean, they sort of nominate the bits they want, the bits they like, the bits they remember, and the lion and bear for some reason just kept coming back. And I mean, weekly we have people show up at the brewery with lion and bear tattoos, or lion tattoos, or bear tattoos, and I mean, it's
but the fact that it happened organically, and the guy came up with it because like when you try to come up with your own nickname and you try to be badass, and it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. The fact that was just because of the way you guys debated with each other. You love each other. Your brother-in-laws. Right. Your what is it? Your brother-in-law.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your brother-in-law. So you debate aggressively. You're talking business. You love each other, but business is business. Right. You got difference of opinions.
Yeah,
the fact that he came up with that and you guys expounded upon it. Yeah, it was perfect.
Yeah, you cannot challenge something that's authentic. And if its roots are in the ground, and you just can't blow it over. And it's so important. I mean, to me, our brewery's 20 years old, and those are the elements that give it its strength. Is the authentic pieces, the pieces that have sort of emerged as they've emerged.
let's go back to a couple of flavors of the beer that I really love here, and there's a bunch of them. And I got to give my neighbor credit, Bucky. He's the one that turned me on to Firestone Walker. So, Bucky, there's your shout out. Man, what I'm really blown away by, and you touched upon it earlier, was the luponic distortion. Because, man, in doing my research, I can't find a definition for luponic anywhere. And so was this Matt's idea? Because basically you described it, it's evolving or revolving the hops every 90 days. So like right now, this luponic distortion that I'm drinking right now that I'd like another glass of is batch 001. And in 90 days, it will be batch 002 because you're changing the hops out.
Yeah.
And the taste will always keep changing as y'all experiment with hops.
Yeah, and that's a great... this is a complicated one. I mean, there's a lot of things that went into luponic. I mean, first of all, it's we live in an incredibly sort of promiscuous palate. So our consumers are so excited about beer at the moment. They want to try something new all the time. So this was somewhat of an answer to that solution. Is okay. Well, let's give you something that's changing all the time so that you can actually experiment, but you also can rely on the facts from the brewery, and it's in these general parameters. And with luponic, malt bill's the same, the color's the same, the alcohol's the same. All we're doing is experimenting with different hops.
Right.
Why does that work for us? Well, Brynildson, I think, is one of the foremost hop maestros in the world. And, he's 4-time... mid-sized brewer at the World Beer Cup, 4-time mid-sized brewer at the Great American Beer Festival. I mean, the guy's got, he's earned his spurs, and he's also a hop chemist. He's on the American Hop Board. He spends a lot of time with people who grows hops. I mean, he talks about hop cultivars and hop botany, and this was just a way for him to say, okay, so let's play with some of these experimental hops. I mean, the reason why luponics, we call it luponic distortion and not the name of the hop, is because some of these hops aren't even named.
Right.
At the moment, they're just serial numbers. And so we don't publish the hops that go into this beer. This is 001, 002 is coming out here in the next couple of weeks. The name luponic distortion, it speaks to two things. I mean, luponic comes from lupulin, which is the oil in hops. And distortion speaks to, Matt's a music head, and the concept of sort of like a mixing board and moving different flavors around, a little bit like you'd move different sounds around. Seems to have resonated, and more importantly,
I think it's awesome.
The beer's fascinating.
Yeah.
The beer is really, really fascinating to drink.
I'm looking forward to batch 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was funny in reading about Matt. He was worried about, one of the customers said, or one of the people that love the beer said, I'm worried because I love luponic 001 so much that I'm not going to, like 002. He goes, no, it's going to be in the same wheelhouse, but you'll love it. Just trust me.
Right.
And he kind of defines it as you guys basically gave him the creative liberty to, he likened it to a classic rock band that does their trademark hits, but then all of a sudden they'll start riffing and jamming on something and just be creative. And so that's his chance to jam and be creative with the hops and create something new, and that's kind of the luponic story, right?
Right, absolutely. And that's the that's the whole theme behind the thing. That's the way he approaches it. I think it's sort of fascinating also. I mean, we've got an amazing crew at the brewery. We're brewing round the clock, 6 days a week. Just great guys, on the production side brewing these beers. To be able to change the beer up on a regular basis is so much fun. It's great brewing beer, and it's intense, making sure the quality's there every time and it's consistent. But, after a while, it's sort of like, okay, I nailed that.
Yeah.
Give me something else to do.
Well, I mean, it's same old. I mean, because like he describes, when people get DBA, they expect it to be very consistent with the last DBA, as all of your beers are. Yeah. So now comes the fun where he gets to mix it up, and you don't know what to expect.
Right. And that's what this so the beer both gives us energy at the brewery, and it gives our faithful drinkers energy. Is like, this is I'm looking forward to the next one.
Let's talk about another beer that blew me out of the water was Parabola. And, man, at 13.1%, I think I'm correct. And this beer is just off the charts. And how was this thing born?
You know, this goes back to something you talked about earlier about Matt being at Goose Island. You know, Matt Brynildson and Greg Hall, John Hall's son, who was John Hall was the owner of Goose Island, and Greg was one of the brewers there and brewed with Matt in the early days. And you know, Greg's obviously the mind behind Bourbon County Stout, BCS, and now arguably the largest barrel aging program in the U.S., if not the world. You know, a lot of that is because obviously AB have put their muscle behind it. But you know, Matt was, you know, they were riffing on beers at that time. You know, back in the early 90s, and you know, they were throwing beers in bourbon barrels and experimenting with them and so forth. So when Matt showed up in California, he did the same thing. I mean, the first Christmas party we had, he pulled out this beer that had been aged in bourbon barrels. It's like, what, you know, what's this?
Yeah.
And tastes great. And so what he did for several years is he would, you know, he would bring these bourbon barrels into the brewery, and it was actually fascinating. He used to have this guy called Tom Griffin out of the South would bring him up in this old horse trailer, and he'd unload these barrels, and the brewers, and it was a small crew at the time, we'd all sort of pull out of the brewery and pull out the Angel Share and roll these barrels around. They throw some beer in them, and then they just go and hide them, put them away places. And it was always it was a little bit like sort of an eccentricity within the brewery. I mean, we never ever thought we would sell these beers.
Yeah.
And then one day, you know, we decided to celebrate an anniversary. It was our 10th anniversary, and we said, so what can we do that's special? And Matt said, well, we got some of these barrel-aged beers, let's blend them, and let's go grab some of my buddies around here, some winemakers, and let's bring them into the program, because, you know, winemakers are reflexive blenders. I mean, whereas brewers have been trained and constrained to live in a very sort of Teutonic, regimented world, and well, wine guys, you know, they're throw some of that in or pull all of that out, and they're a little bit more fluid in the way that they, no pun intended, florid maybe is a better word, in how they approach these things. Anyway, point being is one of those component beers that went into that anniversary beer was Parabola. And Matt, Matt called the beer Parabola because, you know, a lot of these beers are mathematical equations when you look at them. And so we're always pulling out calculators to work out, you know, what the specific gravity is and a bunch of other stuff. So
the other beer that I want to talk about was the anniversary blend that you just talked about, 19, right, because Rob down at El Segundo turned me onto that. I had never had that. I was over at his house. He goes, because he's a big fan of y'all's beer, and they make great beer themselves. And he poured me a glass of that, and we shared a bottle together, and that blew me out of the water. So now I know how that was born. But y'all had the foresight to start doing stuff like that.
It did, and you know, once again, it brings beer culture into the discussion. It makes us a lot more creative as brewers.
Let's talk about getting some people over here, because every time I come over here, dude, you guys have been slammed. You got to have reservations to get in this place almost. I mean, please come. It's on the corner of Lincoln, Washington. It's the Old World Gym. It's the Firestone Walker Brewing Company, and it's badass. If we're trying to talk to someone who just drinks the normal beer, which I used to drink before I got into the craft beer movement, and had so much fun exploring and go through these different beers. Dude, the Pale 31 is awesome. It's a mild step in. It's you know, it's nice. It's refreshing. It doesn't just smack you in the face with, hey, I'm real hoppy, and so I would recommend someone try that.
Yeah. It's probably a little bit like your world. You know, there's people in your world who you and your peers respect as being unbelievably good at what they do.
Right, Ric Flair.
And the rest of the world doesn't. They don't quite see that person. But you sort of like, that's the gold standard right there. Pale 31's that beer. We've won more awards with that beer, and it's probably the most balanced and elegantly conceived beer. I mean, it's just so good. And I always know when I'm talking to someone who's got a really good palate, because when they talk about our beers, they talk about Pale 31, because it's such a good beer and perfect for its style, and actually, very connected to the American craft beer styles.
How long has Pale 31 been around?
15 years.
Oh, so it's been around.
Oh yeah, for a long, long time. It was one of our. It was
because Union Jack was my first foray into y'all's beer.
So Pale 31 was a derivation on an original pale ale we made called Windsor Pale Ale, and it was our second beer after DBA.
You said that Union Jack should have been Old Glory. Have you ever thought about coming back out, or now just coming up with a beer called Old Glory?
It's not a bad idea.
Before we wrap this up, in an interview with Matt Brentelson, I can't remember the publication, but and I think you guys listed all the ingredients to all your beers, for a big period of time or for a period of time, and so not so fast with luponic distortion, because all of a sudden everybody started going towards these hops because y'all mentioned them.
Yeah.
And there was a shortage of hops.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't understand, man, you can get in the beer business, but if you're not signed up to get X amount of hops from this grower, you ain't going to have enough hops to make your beer.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I mean...
Because it takes 8 to 9 years to create a new hop.
I'm not sure it takes that long, but some of these smaller hops can be... Some of these smaller hops can be grown on a much more limited level. I mean, like Bavarian Mandarina that went into Easy Jack. Once we'd developed that, we literally had to tie up the world market for that, and we didn't make a lot of it. I mean, there was just not a lot of it out there.
Okay, tying up these contracts with these hop growers. I mean, so going back to the line in the Bear, and Matt's doing the brewing, and he's overseeing all that, and that's his vision, and going with the standard trademark beers that everybody comes to love and know from Firestone Walker. So then I see you here. I'm turning into I'm a local.
Right.
Or regular.
Good.
So I only live a couple of blocks down the road. But so I see you doing your thing. But what is your thing, and then what is Adam saying as pertains to the business model?
Well, we've swapped backwards and forwards depending on what we do. But for the material part of the last 10, 15 years, Adam's very involved in building out the physical brewery and essentially helping Matt develop his vision in terms of the overall brewing side. And him and I actually, we run the business together. We're both in charge of driving culture and telling our stories. I spend a lot more time, obviously, out telling the story of the brewery, and just sort of, I'm quite involved, obviously, with the greater side of the craft beer revolution, which is the sort of associations that oversee craft beer, and I think that's important. It's important that the ecosystem that we're trying to grow our brewery in is healthy. It's still very much a small company, so we're doing everything from.
It's a big small company. Yeah,
no, you're right. It is a big small company, but breweries are magnificently inefficient. I mean, you have to. We employ a lot of people, and. Keeping everybody on track, keeping everybody happy, keeping everybody focused on what we're supposed to be doing. What's the right beer to make? What's the right message? How do we tell our story? There's a lot of moving parts, and that keeps both of us pretty busy.
What is Adam's background? Because it seems like you're an entrepreneur, guy that learns on the fly, on the job training, and is adaptable. What is his background?
So he's obviously wine grower, wine producer.
But a guy that was out in the fields doing that, or college educated, degree?
Yeah, Marine Corps.
Right.
Picked up a law degree in the Marine Corps, and very sort of, involved in the Gulf War. And so he was his background was, was very much in that area. And to a certain extent, obviously, lent itself to the winemaking side. It's lent itself to sort of understanding, the elements that go into producing, a large amount of wine or beer or you name it.
In closing, y'all not in the too distant past did some business with. Now I'm going to mispronounce the name. Is it Duvel or Duvet?
Duvel. Yeah.
So y'all did some business with Duvel, and partnered.
So.
How would you explain that? Because I just want to get your vision of the future for Firestone Walker. That's where I'm going.
And that's exactly why we climbed in bed with Duvel. So we have for 20 years it was Adam and I, and now it's Michel Morgat, who is the fourth generation owner of Duvel Morgat. He owns Duvel Morgat with his two brothers and his cousin. Duvel Morgat is one of the most beautiful breweries in the world. The family own about 8 breweries around the world. As a consolidated group, they're still smaller than Sierra Nevada, so they're not a large group. And we needed to go to the next level in order to keep up with the growth and expansion of the brewery. And we could have gone a bunch of different ways. We could have raised venture capital with private equity. We could have tried to, we could have tried to get in bed with a large brewer, or we could have tried to sort of get in bed with who we did ultimately partner with, which is Duvel Morgat, who are a international, we call them a craft brewery. But they, without question, are the future of the Firestone Walker Brewing Company. We wanted a long-term platform for the brewery that would exist beyond us, and for our employees and for our vision. They needed to be a family-run enterprise. They needed to be craft and beer culture centric. They needed to have an insane sort of attention to quality. Family businesses are sort of strange. They make decisions that normal businesses don't, because it's a family. Their name's on the bottle. They get stopped in the street and tapped on the shoulder and said, hey, this is your business. Thank you for doing this, or I don't like that. So there's a sort of a proprietal element to a family enterprise that you don't have, I think, with giant public companies or just other sort of investors. And Duvel Morgat had that in spades. Plus, they're an amazing brewer, so we don't have to explain to them why we want to spend twice as much on a centrifuge with our new plant than someone else would. I mean, they understand these things.
And talking with Ken Grossman down there at Chico at Sierra Nevada, it seemed like he's friends with everybody in the craft beer business because he's been around since '78.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the guys from Lagunitas, Stone, Sierra Nevada. I know you're a fan of their Pale Ale. How competitive are you with those guys? Because I think you probably consider them friends, and you're all in this boat together, which is the craft beer movement.
It's so far so good, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that we sort of all share the same problems, that we share the same enemies.
Who would you call an enemy?
An enemy is the indifference of beer culture. Prior to us showing up, beer to most people was sort of refreshment and good times, and our message is there's more to it. And that's the message of every craft brewer. So, what I mean by the enemy, it's an indifference. It's a bland palate, and that's rapidly going away.
Gotcha.
We're all
well said.
We're all spreading the same message,
right?
And so there's there's solidarity in that, some esprit de corps. So that really is the overwhelming thing that knits us together. Without question, we have different opinions on stuff. We bang into each other in the market, but so far it's a great community to be part of.
Last thing I'll mention before we go home, because we got pizzas, got chicken wings or buffalo wings and things sitting in front of us, and I want another beer. The El Dorado, I got to give that a shout out because I was in here the other night. Y'all had run out of Parabola, right, and the guy suggested El Dorado, and it tasted almost exactly like Parabola, but it wasn't the same color, whereas Parabola is almost black.
Yeah.
And then El Dorado is just kind of a little dark but clear, and it's an amazing beer, but it again clocks in at about 13%.
Yeah.
That is something that is off the charts, and you've got to swing by here to try that beer out. How was that beer born? It's amazing. And it is bourbon barrel aged too.
It is, so there's method to our madness. So we release 7 or 8 strong ales: Parabola, Sticky Monkey, El Dorado, Velvet Merkin, Bravo, Double DBA. And these beers are all colors in a palette that we use to paint our anniversary. and they're component beers. Heldorado's role in this is it's a blonde barley wine, so it brings color. And so if we want to lighten up the color in the final blend, we blend in more Heldorado. Sticky Monkey is it's technically I think a Belgian quad. I mean, there's a lot of Belgian candy sugar in that beer, and it's super sweet, like tiramisu in a glass, and that brings sweetness. Heldorado is there's a hop in this. Eldorado, obviously, and the color. Those bring the elements of Eldorado. So Eldorado was conceived to solve a particular issue in building the anniversary, and it stands on its own legs, as you can see. I mean, it's an interesting beer.
One of my biggest things that back into my career in professional wrestling was Hell Yeah. So then, and Heldorado, not only is it's an outstanding beer, but who in the hell came up with that name? No pun intended, because it's awesome.
Well, it comes from the hop, as always. So Heldorado. Yeah.
And that's a hop?
Eldorado is the
Eldorado.
hop. So we called it. So we called it Heldorado.
Awesome idea. Hey, it's good beer. I'm going to sit here with David Walker, my guest today on the Steve Austin Show. I'm at Firestone Walker Brew Pub here in Venice, California, right on the corner of Lincoln and Washington. Man, if you're in the area, swing by. They make badass beer. Everybody knows that. If you've had their beer, if you want to try it, come experiment. If you just want to come to eat, they got badass food, and that's the bottom line because I said so. Thank you, David.
Amen. Thank you.
All right, everybody, give me the go home cue. It's time to wrap up this podcast and ride off in the sunset. Before I do, I want to thank David Walker of Firestone Walker Brewing Company. They make some badass beer, and they got some badass food over there at the Brew Pub on the corner of Lincoln and Washington. And if you're in this neck of the woods, stop by and have a pint. They also do growler fills and all kinds of stuff over there. I highly recommend the place. It's a good vibe, and they make badass beer and great food. Did I mention that yet? Hey, man. Let me take care of a little personal business. I've got some new T-shirt designs over at ProWrestlingTees.com/Steve Austin or BrokenSkullRanch.com. Anything that's Steve Austin related, you can find it there. But it's all them shirts you've been seeing me wear on Broken Skull Challenge and the ones that were on Redneck Island. They're all at BrokenSkullRanch.com and ProWrestlingTees.com/Steve Austin. We still got a few episodes of Broken Skull Challenge to go this season. Every Sunday night on CMT, 8/7 Central. Do not miss these last few episodes. We're on the go home. We're about to wrap this thing up, but epicness continues. This is the toughest show on television, bar none. There are many out there that have been inspired by the Broken Skull Challenge, and I wish all those shows the best of luck in the world because competition is good. But the Broken Skull Challenge is real deal, toughest show on television, and that's the bottom line because I said so. Dig this. Broken Skull IPA, the award-winning IPA. I consider it to be the best IPA in the United States of America over at El Segundo Brewing Company. If you stop into town, go to 140 Main Street in El Segundo. Tell them Austin sent you and have a cold pint right there at the brewery. If you're in California, you can find Broken Skull IPA at Whole Foods, Total Wines, or in some states you can order it at InsideTheCellar.com. And don't forget about the Steve Austin Broken Steel Cold Steel Knife. If you want a badass knife that will work its ass off, or open letters, do whatever you want it to do, the Steve Austin Broken Skull Knife from Cold Steel Knives is available at BrokenSkullRanch.com or ColdSteelKnives.com. It's badass. Everything Steve Austin, find the BrokenSkullRanch.com. Website is back up and running. It's got everything you need. Now, let me say thank you before I go get my shoulder fixed tomorrow or yesterday as you listen to this podcast. Thank you for supporting and sponsoring the Steve Austin podcast because, without a doubt, they're the ones that let me do this for you free twice a week. So big thanks to ddpyoga.com/Austin and the DDP Yoga Now app. To Onnit, go to onnit.com/Steve to get 10% off your order. To TrueCar, and thanks to Amazon. Hey, man, they've been supporting the podcast since day one. Just use my Amazon links whenever you're doing any online shopping, and Amazon will kick back a couple of bucks to the podcast. It does not cost you anything extra. There are no hidden fees or charges. Buy whatever you're planning on buying and help out the podcast in the process. Here's what you do. Go to PodcastOne.com. Click the Killer Deals button in the top right corner of the page. Then hit the Steve Austin Show button. I got Amazon links for USA, UK, and Canada. And if you want to help the show, they'll kick back a small percentage anytime you make a purchase. It does not cost you anything extra. Bookmark that link, hit it in one step, make it easy on yourself, and know that if you keep supporting the podcast, I keep delivering the free cans of audio whoop-ass. Hey, folks, keep listening. The 60-second AP News headlines are coming up next. Until then, my name is Steve Austin, and I will catch your ass down the road.
Download new episodes of Steve Austin Unleashed every Thursday at PodcastOne.com. That's PodcastOne.com.